Okay. All right. Oh, I see. We're good? All right. It is 6:30, so we will call the meeting to order. If everybody could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call.
Matt Doublestein, Andrew McGee,
Here.
Lauren Foley,
Here.
Steve Milstead,
Here.
Danny Powers,
Here.
Philip Snowberger,
Here.
Dave Taylor.
Here. Okay. Move on to approval of the agenda. Any changes for the agenda?
The only proposed change we have from staff would be for items C and D to be heard at the same time. But 2 votes, so 1 presentation but 2 votes.
I will make a motion to combine the presentations, but keep separate motions for both C and D. PC 22-053 DP Development Plan and PC 22-054 DP Development Plan for the Indianapolis Logistics Park Northwest Building 1 and 2.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Any additional changes to the agenda? All right. We'll move on to July 11th meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look those over?
I'll make a motion to approve the July 11th, 2022 meeting minutes.
Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any public requests to speak on topics that are not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none in the room and none online. And then no presentations under unfinished business. We still have 3 items that are going to be continued. PC 22-029 PP Primary Plat Peabody, PC 22-035 PP Primary Plat Bridal Oaks South, and then PC 22-041-ZA Zone Amendment McLaren. All 3 that are still continued. So we will move on to new business. Item A, PC 22-049 PP Primary Plat Jackson Run East. Is the petitioner ready? Okay, you go ahead and approach the podium. Should be on. Just a reminder, state your name and.
Good evening. Brett Huff with Kinley Horn, office at 250 East 96th Street, Suite 580, Indianapolis, Indiana 46240. We're the engineers for this project, representing Adam Braun with Braun Property Development, who's also here. Jackson Run East is a continuing development of the kind of the overall Jackson Run area. We've seen south and north recently. This sits at the southeast corner of 200 and 700. It's 75 acres, 277 lots. We submitted initially and received staff comments. One of the bigger comments was to try and eliminate one of the cul-de-sacs. We had 4 cul-de-sacs on this project originally, so we were able to make a looped road there and eliminate 2 of them. This project has three separate lot types for 3 different products. There's a 42-foot product, a 50-foot product, and a 55-foot product. I think with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you. Staff report.
Good evening. My name is Desiree Irakoza, and I'll be presenting for PC 22-049, Primary Plat Jackson Run. The petitioner is proposing 227 lot family single detached subdivision on 75.4 acres. The property is located on the southeast corner of Country Road 200 South and Country Road 700 East. The site is zoned MU Core, which is a mix of commercial, office, and residential uses. It is currently surrounded by agriculture and residential uses. As you stated before earlier, this is part of the Jackson Run development, and you've seen Jackson Run North and just Jackson Run East. This is a proposed density of about 3.01, and the maximum around here would be about 15 acres per unit. There are two entrances, one on 200 and one on 700. There's two cul-de-sacs. There's internal sidewalks, and along the outside there are 10-foot wide paths. And there is approximately 17 acres of open common area. Staff is recommending positive recommendation. Although noted on here, not noted on the staff report, we are recommending the condition that they submit a revised landscape plan.
We'll open the public hearing portion. I do have one person that has requested to speak on this item. It's Dave Marlowe. Just as a reminder for the record, if you just state your name and address.
Sure. My name's Dave Marlowe. It's 7010 East, 200 South, Whitestown, Indiana. So I just had a few questions about this. I guess this is the first time I heard that there might be a stipulation put into the approval of this depending on landscaping. What I want to know is there an actual scaled version of this? My question is it, when I take what I get sent, it looks like the entrance to this is directly across the street from my house. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure you wouldn't want an entrance to a housing addition directly across the street from your house. My next question would be, what's that going to do to my property value? These are all questions that I'm hoping somebody has the answer to. Meaning, I'm looking for either the developer's help understanding this, or the town's help backing me as a homeowner that's kind of, out where nobody, really comes out and sees. Now that we're being looked at for development, it's almost like we're on our own. Nobody cares. I mean, the roads out there are embarrassing. But again, will this question get answered tonight?
Sorry, I heard the landscaping question, but are you talking about property values or?
No, where everything is laid out. Is the entrance, in fact, directly across the street? And then will you guys help me by saying, hey, move it down if it is? I mean, I know I'm not going to stop this thing, but I mean, let's remember we were there first. So.
All right. They'll have a chance to address your question.
Yeah, and not to mention, again, this is not, the reason I think about this entrance going in is because the passing lane, decel lane, whatever you want to call it, will probably get put in my front yard. I've got children that get on the bus every single day. Actually, the bus sometimes turns around in my driveway because I'm the last stop out on our road. So a lot of things. It's property value, my children getting on and off the bus, traffic, the road, 700 where Jackson Run is being developed right now. It's embarrassing. I mean, I don't know if any of you have to travel that way, but I've all but quit going down that road. But I went down that road on purpose to get to this meeting, and there was a sign that said bump ahead. But there was no bump. It was a 2 feet deep hole. So again, I want to know what can we do, because as soon as this starts developing, 300 triaxles per day will be going down through there, and I get it. That's how you do these things. But what can we do to be proactive opposed to reactive? Because it looks like the reaction we're getting out on 700 is not even really good band-aids. It seems to be a waste. But again, that's not my department. But I mean, are these questions that I can get answered by the developer, or will the town push to get me answers for that?
We'll let them address
Let him know.
comments in a moment. Yeah.
And just real quick, you said you're on 200 South?
Yep.
Is that right? So that would probably be the property kind
The
of
only property that you
on the
see
north side of 200 South.
affected by this, for sure.
Okay.
And again, the layouts that we've got from the first one even to the one that's changed since the first one, it's always kind of looked like the entrance to this place is directly across the street. But I'm like, let's wait, because it was conceptual. Well, now it's getting a little more permanent, and it still looks like it's directly across the street from my road or from my house. So again, I'm digging the ponds. I mean, I'm going to probably do some berming myself. I'd love to see some berming from the developer. So I'm sure that falls in line with the landscape plan like they did down 650. Whoever's developing that, I feel did a fairly decent job. Then people that live on the east side of 650, it sucks, but at least they're not staring at two-story homes right there. So, I mean, again, are these, because I don't know, are these things that I have to ask the developer, or I ask the town and to consider these stipulations prior to approving?
Well, this is the public hearing portion, so they'll have a chance to respond to your questions. And
Sure.
then we also have town staff on plan commission as well, so.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
about all I got.
Thank you. Are there any other public requests to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no others in the room or online, we will close the public hearing. Petitioner?
I wrote down a few notes here. As far as the entrance across from the house, it's not directly, but it's really close to being across from his house, and the passing blister would probably cross through some of his property. There's a requirement to be so far from an intersection, so from 200 and 700, we can't shove the entrance all the way over. If we moved it over west, it'd probably make it worse, to be honest with you. But the other question was about the property values. I mean, these will be high-end homes from probably 350, 400,000, somewhere in there. Concerning the 700 road, the developer's been working with the town to come up with a plan for improvements to 700 all the way down. So those are in the works. We've got some cost estimates. That has to. I think the stipulation is that has to get done prior to or with the first phase of this development, if not sooner. And then across the frontage, you mentioned landscaping. So there is a requirement for landscaping across the entire frontage. As Jackson Run North to the west of us starts getting done, you'll start to see some of the landscaping that was required there. It'll be similar. Here, we'll have berms and landscaping per the town's requirements. And then also, with there being a lake almost across the entire frontage of 200, I think that offers some good buffering to any of the neighbors, rather than having homes that were just backing up there. And I think that covers most of the questions from our end.
Discussion on the board, questions from the board or from the planning commission?
So just looking at this, could that entrance be shifted to the east at all? I noticed there was a common area behind those houses. And I don't know if has to be a detention pond or anything there. just asking questions. And my whole thought was if it's close to the resident across the street, if it would shift to the east a little bit, if that would maybe alleviate some of his concerns.
I'd say it's a possibility. We'd have to look into that further, engineering design wise. Of course, that pushes our 8 cell lane over onto our next property owner, which it could be a whole another issue as well. Right. So we were trying to keep the entrance in our control on our property.
And Danny, is that correct about it's about 700?
So yeah, 700. We've been working with the developer and come up with a plan, and they will be fully reconstructing the road from the construction limits of from their D-cell lane to their A-cell lane, and we are looking at doing all the parts between because they have 4 different entrances on 700, so it takes care of quite a bit when they do their section. So you will see improvements to it. We do plan on repairing the bad spots this year, but doing the actual improvements to 700 next year.
Any further questions, comments?
Is the developer willing to put forth a good faith effort to explore moving that entrance and maybe having that conversation with the adjacent property owner? If there could be some property acquired for acceleration, deceleration lanes as part of this project, just
Property Development, 1155 Parkway Drive, Suite 300, Zionsville. Yeah, I mean, I'd say we'd be willing to look into see what we can do. I don't know that it changes the situation because the length of the A-cell, D-cell lane is still probably going to get into their property even if we shift it. So you're probably still going to have a similar circumstance where maybe the entrance isn't directly across, but it's still going to be within the limits of the A-cell, D-cell lane. So that's something that we'd have to look at.
Normally not, but come on, go ahead.
You can't move that road 200 feet. And from what I understand from this gentleman here is, and I'm sure there's requirements. You have to be X amount of feet from a. So is that something that the town can say, hey, we'll kind of overlook that X amount of feet from the crossroads to wherever that is and to allow the moving? Again, I know it's going to happen. I'm just trying to make it be as least. At night, I've already got lights shining in my house, believe it or not, from the new portion of 300, where they take that curve to head out west. Literally, it shines right through, and the way that my pane is in the window, it's like a disco light in my house. So this is going to be that amplified because it's instead of hundreds of yards away, this is going to be but 100 feet. So again, it sounds like it might be one of those cases where we'd love to move it, but we can't because of the stipulations that we have to hit. We have to hit these benchmarks and be X amount of feet away. But again, I'm hoping that the entrance can be moved. I'm digging the ponds. The ponds are great. But that entrance has been just from conception, it's always been there. I was hoping when we got, I'd love a scaled plan so I can go over there myself and go, all right, here's exactly where this road's gonna go, but I have a feeling it's gonna be directly in front of my house, maybe off just a little bit. For sure. But again, this is where I would ask the town to please put something in there if we can afford to approve.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve docket PC 22-049-PP primary plat Jackson Run East, to include the staff recommendations, and can we add a condition in there that the developer try to make a good faith effort to work with the adjacent homeowner?
So legally, you can add reasonable conditions to a primary plat. I guess I'm always concerned when we use reasonable efforts or things like that, what you're asking for. It sounds to me like you at least want them to meet, do more than just give lip service to checking a box of a meeting. Is that fair?
Yeah. I just don't know a good way to put that in there.
If this drive is moved as a result, does that change? I mean, that changes the primary plat. You can make that as an administrative change. So I don't have any problem with that condition. You know, the only reason I have concerns about it broadly or generally just because anybody could argue that somebody didn't make a good faith effort. But if we want to say make a good faith effort to meet and confer on the issues raised by these folks and report back at time for next approval, I think that's appropriate. Yeah. And just to be clear, the other condition from staff is the landscape plan resubmittal, so you're including that in your motion. So it'd be approval of primary plat with the condition of resubmitting a landscape plan that complies with our ordinance and meeting with the property owner who's been here tonight.
Yes. Would that be agreeable? Okay. Do I need to restate that or?
No, I think that, I've made the motion, as long as that's what your motion is.
Yes.
On a second.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item B under new business, PC 22-051-DP Development Plan, City Mark Whitestown Park 400. Petitioner.
Good evening. My name is Brian Sheward. I'm a civil engineer at Kimley Horn & Associates. Offices at 250 East 96th Street, Suite 580, Indianapolis, Indiana. I had sent along a presentation. Do you have that, Lori? Oh, hey, Todd. Thank you. While I wait for that, I have two representatives here tonight. One's Matt Carlstead from City Mark in the back, and then Matt Brower from Peterson Company as well, who will be the anticipated builder on the project. So if there's any questions that I can't answer, I'm sure they'd be happy to. So you may recall earlier this year we were here for a rezone petition on this. It was formerly referred to as the Groover project, but it's an industrial development on the southwest corner of County Road 300 and County Road 400. Thank you, Todd. Next slide. So the yellow boundary that you see here is approximately 96 acres. That's the overall, what we're calling Park 400 industrial development. What we're here tonight to seek approval for, hopefully, is Building 1, which is circled in blue. It's kind of in the middle of the site. We have access to this site, as you'll see in the coming slides, to the southeast, down over to County Road 450 East, which is the north-south road to the east. So the only public ingress egress for vehicles and trucks will be down to that southeast corner. Next slide. Zoning, as I mentioned, or I may not have mentioned, this is an I-1 zoned area in purple with the northernmost piece multifamily, and the Building 1 development plan that we're speaking about tonight sits within the I-1 area there in the middle part of the left side of that area. Next slide. So a few details on the project. As I mentioned, it's just under 100 acres total for the development, but the development plan that we're presenting tonight is for Building 1, and it's approximately 24 acres in size. As I mentioned, the site is zoned I-1. This is a speculative cross-dock industrial warehouse, approximately 380,000 square feet at approximately 45 feet tall, and our vehicle, trailer, and bicycle parking spaces are in compliance with the thresholds within the UDO. And access is to the southeast. You'll see it on the next slide. So we had already been approved for the primary plat, but I thought it was worth noting this again. The development plan we're speaking about now is Lot 1, which is 2 lots down on the left-hand side of the screen there. With the project, we're dedicating right-of-way up County Road 450 East on the west side, on our half of 450 East, and same thing on County Road 300, dedicating a half right-of-way on the south side of 300. Access to the site again, southeast corner, and with this project along the frontage of Lot 4 in this case, with the first building, we'll be reconstructing County Road 450 further north. If you've been out in this area recently, the patch job to the south is reconstructing 450 from Albert White up to where that red circle is, and that City Mark would pick up and reconstruct in the same cross-section major collector up that stretch that's highlighted in yellow there along the east side. Next slide. This shows Building 1 cross dock with the docks on the north and south, auto parks on the east and west sides of the building. The light blue color there are the detention basins that would be built with, we're calling Phase 1 or Building 1. And then the long access drive from the southeast corner all the way across the south property line up the west side to access Building 1. And then as future development plans come in the future, there's 3 other proposed buildings, one to the north, one to the south of Building 1, and then another on the southeast corner. And my picture and the Lori, Jill, and Todd is covering up one item, but I did want to point out, if you recall, we were here for the primary plat and concept plan, and we spoke about 3 specific neighbors and their concerns with landscaping and screening. So over the past 3 weeks, we've met with all 3 of them. Matt Carlstead has. And to highlight this on the next few slides, the northernmost, we're showing a 4-foot earthen berm with an 8-foot wooden fence on top, and that's a continuous wood-to-wood, not shadow box. And on the east side, so on the neighbor's side of the berm, a continuous row of deciduous trees, 2-inch caliper. They tend to be installed at 12 to 14 feet tall. That's what we've talked with, I believe that's Hamilton, the neighbor there. To the south, in red, I've highlighted a stretch of an 8-foot wood fence, and that's adjacent to the Schweibold property. I believe the Schweibolds are here this evening. And then lastly, east of the main entry onto County Road 450, you can kind of see it. It's a 5-foot berm that's actually installed on the O'Boyle's front yard. We've worked with them, and it would be more impactful to put it on their front yard, and that's what they've asked for. 5-foot berm, 8-foot wooden fence on top of that, and then evergreen trees on their side of the berm. And arborvitae trees, I think, is what they were asking for. So quite a few back and forths, and if you go to the next slide, Todd, I've stepped through these to show. The first one's the O'Boyle's. You can see the orange area is the half right-of-way that City Mark will be acquiring from the O'Boyle's to build that full width of the road along that frontage. And that just highlights the approximate footprint of a 5-foot berm with an 8-foot fence on top. And then the trees in green, a little bit difficult to see, but on the east side, and it splits their driveway. And these can all be submitted for the record as well. Next slide. This is a sightline study that we promised that we would do. This is the horizontal view showing from the house due east of the berm, looking at 3 different sample points on the future building to be built north of building 1, and then the building 1 you can see at the bottom of the picture. It's 4 foot, as I mentioned, landscape mound with an 8 foot fence on top, and then a continuous row. If you go to the next slide, it's difficult to see, but the sight line looking over the top of that berm, over the top of the fence, and showing that that fully screens any vehicles or semi-trailers that would be pulling around within the development. Point being, the entirety of the building is not screened. You're still going to see the top of the building, but the nuisance of the headlights coming around should be 100% screened. Next slide. And then this in blue, again, difficult to see on the screen here, but along the Schweibold South property line that's north of proposed building 4 is where City Mark's willing to install an 8 foot tall wooden fence. The amount of space to fit a building and the adequate space on the north side of that building for trucks, quite frankly, doesn't leave a lot of space between the edge of that pavement and the property line. So putting in a 4 or 5, 8 foot berm is infeasible with that site plan to be able to develop a building there of that type. So an 8 foot fence is what City Mark is willing to provide along that stretch, which goes above the code requirement for the adjacent zoning, I believe. Next slide. This is the same as last time. There's quite a bit of public infrastructure being built with this project, and we're continuing to work with Danny specifically on the sewer extension, which is shown in green, the public sewer to reach this area, the right-of-way dedications I mentioned, and the public road extension along with the water main extension up County Road 450 that would come with the first building. Next slide. Architectural elevations, you can see it's a gray, white, and blue kind of motif to it, similar to other buildings in the area from a scaling perspective. And next slide. Recapping, rezoning was approved earlier this year. Concept and primary plat were also approved back in June, and staff is providing a favorable recommendation. So we'd be appreciate a favorable recommendation or approval tonight, but if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff report.
The petitioner is requesting a review of a development plan known as City Mark Whitestown Park 400 Building 1. The applicant is proposing to construct approximately 381 square foot building for light industrial use on approximately 24.33 acres. The site in question is located on the east side of Country Road 400 East and is approximately 2,000 feet from the north intersection of Country Road 450 and Albert S. White. As stated, the property is zoned light industrial. The brief history is it was annexed in 2022, and it was also rezoned from ag into the light industrial. And then we have seen the primary plat and the conceptual plan for this property. They're proposing about 289 parking spaces, 8 accessible, and bicycle parking on site, along with 50 trailer parking stalls. The photometrics plan, landscape plan, and architectural elevations do meet the requirements of the UDO, and staff is recommending favorable recommendation at this time. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Thank you. I'll open a public hearing for this item. Is there any request to speak on this item? Okay. Seeing none in the room and none online, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions from the commission? Comments?
Thank you for working with the residents.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Was appreciate you following through with everything and coming back and with the proof that you did.
I would like to make a note that they should submit that revised landscape plan showing the 8-foot fences for us to have as well.
Okay, thank you. All right. Yes. Thank you for working with the neighbors. And if there's no other questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve docket PC 22-024-DP Development Plan, City Mark, Whitestown Park 400, Building 1, with the staff recommendations as presented. The TAC comments from the Public Works Department need to be addressed before site grading, and the applicant will need to submit a revised landscaping plan that meets the requirements of the UDO, as well as the landscaping commitments as presented.
My only clarification on that, and I could have misheard you, but just to clarify that that was a motion to approve PC 22-051-DP development plan. I think the numbers might have been off, but otherwise, I'm okay with that motion. Does that meet all your concerns? Okay. Yeah, so it looks like we have the 51 is the number on the
Oh, I see it.
staff report, but there's also a second number on the staff
Yeah, the agenda is 51.
22-51-DP.
Okay, I will amend that to PC 22-051-DP with all the other stuff.
Second.
All right. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Move on to item C and D.
And for the record, I'm going to have to abstain from this one because I have potential conflict.
Okay. We'll wait for you to leave the room. We'll get you when it's over. All right.
For the purpose of the record in the minutes, just note that Mr. Schnowberger has now left the room.
Sorry, I didn't repeat that. So item C and D. So we have one presentation, but two motions. Is the petitioner ready?
Good evening, Brian Sheward with Kimley Horn. Offices at 250 East 96th Street, Suite 580, Indianapolis, Indiana. This is a petition, and with me tonight, Greg Rasmussen from Ambrose Property Group and my colleague Chad Mays from Kimley Horn. This is for the Indianapolis Logistics Park Northwest, or ILPN, as we've been calling it, Building 1 and Building 2. If you recall, we had brought the concept plan and primary plat a few months back for this petition, and this is the development plan request for both of these buildings. Next slide. Just as a recap, this is on the northeast quadrant kind of area of the new interchange at County Road 550, sandwiched between Perryworth to the south, County Road 500 to the north, and kind of bookended on the east and west with existing development on both the west and the east. 88 acres, which is the northernmost kind of portion, the vast majority of the site is zoned I-1, with a residual approximately 22 acres on the south along Perryworth that's Anson PUD. That's for a different type of development in the future. The concept plan had shown 4 speculative warehouses, and this 3 were single load on the north, west, south, and east was a cross dock. This is for the north and the east buildings, building 1 and 2. Let's see, building 1, building 1 is, with the building 1 package, is the public infrastructure to serve the greater park, and then building 2 is kind of an infill project. Next slide. This is just a graphic showing the 88 acres to the north and the common area on the south. Next slide. Breakup of the parcels. Probably jump ahead there. Next slide, Todd. Thank you. Oh, next. And then you can go to the next one. Thank you. This is showing building 1, which is the eastern building. Docks face east and west. That was something we worked pretty hard during the concept plan to not have docks facing a public right-of-way. So the docks and the trailer parking spots are on the east and west sides of the building, with automobile parking to the north and the south. And you can see access, 2 curb cuts onto County Road 500 to the north, and 1 curb cut on the southwest side of the site onto Perryworth. Next slide. Architecture, notable the glazing or the glass in the corners of the building, and similar to many other buildings out in this area, industrial warehouse with, in this case, more of a lighter color and a blue color motif to it. Next slide. Building 2 sits just to the west and north of Building 1. It fronts County Road 500 to the north, and you can see also the docks and the trailer parking spaces face away from County Road 500, so you'll have the office front facing the road to the north. It shares an access on the east side with the Building 1 access drive, and then on the west side, there's a cut you can see, and those cuts have been specifically placed to line up with cuts on the other side of the road. Next slide. Similar look and feel, just a slightly smaller and single load building to Building 1. Next slide. Staff recommends approval of the project. We believe we're in compliance with the UDO and the standards. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer. Thanks.
Thank you. Staff report.
Related to Indy Logistics Park Northwest Building 1, the applicant is proposing to construct an approximate 630,000 square foot building for light industrial use on approximately 38 acres. As part of this development, site grading and access roads will be provided for other lots in this area. Staff is providing a favorable recommendation for the docket PC 22-053-DP and finds the proposed plans are in compliance with the commitments made at the time of the rezone. Staff finds the proposed plan is in compliance with the design standards of the UDO, manages traffic, and utilities have enough capacity. Related to Indy Logistics Park Northwest Building 2, the applicant is proposing to construct an approximate 189,000 square foot building for light industrial use on approximately 15 acres. Staff is providing a favorable recommendation for the docket PC 22-054 and finds the proposed plans are in compliance with the commitments made at the time of the rezone. Staff finds the proposed plan is in compliance with the design standards of the UDO, manages traffic, and utilities have enough capacity.
Thank you. Any public requests to speak on either of these 2 items? Seeing none in the room and none online, we'll close the public hearing for these 2 items. Questions, comments from the commission? I do have one question, just to remind me of the commitments from the rezone. That was the Anson architectural piece.
Yes, whatever section that was, it was
Yeah.
cited in there, yes.
Right,
So
okay.
it has to deal with the architectural materials, the size, the elevation, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve docket PC 22-053 dash, now I'm like worried I'm gonna say the wrong numbers. Dash DP development plan for the Indianapolis Logistics Park Northwest Building 1.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then the next item, I'd entertain a motion for D.
I'll also make a motion to approve PC 22-054DP development plan for Indianapolis Logistics Building Northwest Building 2.
Second.
Okay, it's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. If somebody could go grab Philip, or he sees now.
You can go ahead and proceed. He's back in the room, so we don't want to hear from him anyway.
There's a lot left on the agenda now. All right, Philip is back in the room. So is there, I don't see on the agenda any other business or announcements, staff. Okay, you came back for item 9.
Does that mean I can make a motion to adjourn?
I believe so. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, have a good evening, everyone.
Recording stopped.